on any thoughts on the recent report that a lot of users will start going to ChatGPT instead of Google News to kind of summarize a lot of like the local news stories?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting how news consumption has changed over time. I think, Google was the big one, and now they kind of transitioned into like a lot of social media, people gathering news from various different social media platforms that have popped up. And now seeing ChatGPT as like a primary place that people are going to for their like first source of news is so interesting. And yeah, interested to see how it's evolved.
For sure, yeah. I think it's going to be an interesting challenge that a lot of publishers face in the next, year and really beyond, right? Is like, how do they really focus on their content, especially in an AI-driven world? A lot of the publishers have already, a lot of the big publishers have already kind of struck deals with OpenAI and other LLMs in order to like basically give access to their content. There were a lot of like New York Times, Business Insider for a while was like basically blocking all crawling of OpenAI, right? And saying, hey, you're not going to train our data without like specific licensing agreements. Um, but yeah, I think the big publishers are probably going to be okay, especially because they have a monetization policy. It'll be interesting to see what happens to smaller publishers who, don't necessarily have the resourcing in order to kind of create those deals. But yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be, I think LLMs are, as people adopt them more, and as Google Ads and as Google search adds more AI driven features, we're going to continue to see like LLMs kind of like aggregate news directly on the spot. So, right, whether it's you're looking for news about the tariffs, like recaps of sporting events, whatever it might be. Like I think Google News already like does that. It's been pretty shaky from what I've seen, but like Google, at least the top stories, like sometimes they'll even have like three or four like highlights of like, hey, here's like the summaries of the top stories. I'm guessing we're just going to see more of that as Google rolls out more AI features and we see, more adoption of ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so interesting for like the local news publications, like it's going to happen to all of the way that their users get that information. But yeah, it's interesting to see how like so much has changed with the Google News algorithm and overall usage. And yeah, it's just so interesting.
We're seeing some people kind of hop in here, so appreciate you all coming in. As you come in, please feel free to use the chat. Please tell us your name, where you're calling in from, maybe even a little bit more information about kind of what you're excited to learn in today's webinar. Couple of housekeeping items as people come in. The most common question we get asked is this going to be recorded? Is there going to be an actual recording of this? In case you weren't able to make the webinar, want to see a recap? Yes, there'll be a recording. It'll be emailed afterward. So if you're worried about that, don't be. We will send that over. So feel free to kind of take in the webinar and then you can save the note taking for a bit later because you will be getting a recording. Um, as well. It's very common that people have questions throughout the webinar. Um, we would recommend in Zoom, there's a specific Q&A section. We recommend leaving your Q&A there. That way at the the Q&A just kind of like nicely summarizes it for us and we'll be able to like see the direct questions. Um, we'll we'll try to look through the comments as questions come through there. Sometimes they just kind of get lost in the shuffle. So if you can add it to the Q&A section, that just makes it a lot easier for us to surface your questions. And we'll generally start there when kind of looking through at the end. So if you have questions throughout, add it to Q&A. That's a nice little bucket for where we can find them. So I think we've given some people enough time to come in, but I'm sure more people will be joining. But hey, everyone, very nice to see you all. And today we're going to be talking about how to improve your visibility in ChatGPT, Google AI mode, Google AI overviews, and really how can you improve your visibility in kind of some of these key platforms. Um, it's one of the most common questions we're getting asked today by clients, potential partners. People are really interested in a lot of these new AI driven features and want to know, hey, how can I get my brand included? What does that mean for me in terms of measurement? All of that. So we're going to be going through a lot of some of the strategies, some of the ways we see either partners we work with, other companies doing it, or just other even ways we've been able to actually like use it for ourselves in our own marketing efforts. Some of the recent new developments that we're seeing with some of these models. So quick introduction to myself. I'm Chris Long. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Go Fish Digital. I head up a lot of Go Fish Digital's internal marketing efforts, a lot of thought leadership conferences, social strategy, editorial strategy, as well as advise a lot of our clients on their AI search strategies. So working with Google AI overviews, ChatGPT to advise clients on how they can improve their visibility there. I'm joined by Kalina McKay, who I'll let introduce herself.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Kalina. I'm super excited to be here. So I lead our own media division here at GoFish. So that includes the copywriting, SEO, online reputation management, and digital PR teams. My background is primarily on the digital PR side. That's kind of the area that I came from. I'm really passionate about pitching to journalists and securing backlinks for our clients. My work has been featured in sites like Washington Post, Forbes, Business Insider, and a ton of others. So yeah, super excited to be here and super excited to chat about it.
So what you'll learn today is we're going to go through a few different kind of key pillars about AI search and getting included, right? A few things we're going to be going over is what actually impacts the visibility in AI generated answers, why traditional rankings are going to mean a little bit less, and how we need to rethink the way we think about visibility in the search engines. We're seeing a lot of interesting data around kind of the great decoupling, as it's been called, and a lot of other traditional SEO metrics are changing. So how can we change along with it? We're going to be talking about specific strategies for how we can actually appear in AI overviews and ChatGPT search, how we've been able to use systems such as our similarity scoring to really understand how AI is actually scoring content and improving our content structure. And we're also going to be talking about how to leverage digital PR for improved coverage across all AI models, as using things like consensus is really big in a lot of AI models. And we're really seeing that, especially with Google's AI mode. It's using a lot of consensus factoring, and brands that tend to get cited in AI mode are cited across multiple authoritative articles. So one of the big takeaways that we kind of want to start with is that search is not just a list of links anymore, right? Those days are gone and likely never coming back, right? Instead, what AI, especially Google's AI overviews and likely the introduction of Google's AI mode is going to bring is going to create a summary of events, right? So if you use Google's AI mode, you'll be able to see that if you ask it a question, it'll be able to answer it directly in the chat. And oftentimes it's going to provide those summaries of brands on the very right-hand side, right? So marketers are going to need to shift their kind of thinking towards thinking about search as a summary, right? We're already seeing that with AI overviews. We're seeing, anywhere from a 34% drop in click-through rates when AI overviews are present. So impressions are becoming more and more important. Like I said, we're seeing a lot of the great decoupling charts where impressions are going up for people over the years as either rankings improve or just general search is getting more popular, but clicks are staying pretty steady or even dropping as a result of AIOs. So it needs to be more thinking in terms of impressions, branding, and then in terms of conversion, getting your brand cited in those really key types of queries that people are searching. So another question we get asked is, why are some brands showing up while others aren't? And there's a few reasons for that. One of the big reasons is that AI takes a look at the whole context of a page and is less focused on individual queries, right? So like AI can score an individual page, it can score even an individual passage by using things like similarity. But what similarity takes into is the entire context of a document, not just, hey, did it use the keywords enough time and have a high enough match with just basic keyword matching. It's much deeper than that. And AI is even better at understanding an entire page or even passage's contextual alignment with the individual prompt. So that's a big shift that we're advising clients on is that pages need to represent entire context and not just individualized keywords. As a result, their visibility is more hinges around like semantic similarity and structure and offsite authority. So like, is your content structured in a way that AI can understand? Does it have the semantic relevance that it needs to even be pulled into the original grounding system? And you have enough offsite authority, right? Because a lot of these AI systems aren't not just looking at your own site, they're also looking at other third-party sites. You need to have authority on those sites, and the more spread you have across those sites, the better your chances of appearing in the AI driven results. as well. Co-citations mean even more, right? So really understanding not just your brand listing in the context of your own website, but how are you ranking in affiliate sites, even competitor articles that list you, even third-party sites like Reddit, right? We're seeing a lot of data suggesting that like a lot of these AI models are heavily leading on Reddit. I don't see that going away anytime soon. I see that only increasing. So understanding how your brand appears in the citations in those conversations is going to matter a lot, because these AI models are using a lot of third-party data to either train their models or to even, when using the search functionality, to basically use consensus to recommend different brands and which brands to go with. And finally, as a result, it's kind of a new disciplines are emerging. There's a lot of debate on this, whether it's, how much is traditional SEO versus generative engine optimization. We take the stance that it's there's enough different things that it's a new enough discipline, right? Optimizing for these models requires knowing a lot more about context windows, long tail search, really doing things like affiliate sites, Reddit marketing, as I mentioned, digital PR. There's a lot of different aspects that go into this. As a result, we're seeing generative engine optimization really start to stand up as its own kind of discipline.
Yeah, so we kind of want to open it up for a quick poll here. So curious to know who's in the room. Are you guys currently optimizing for AI overviews or ChatGPT? Just want to get a sense of where we're currently at. So either yes, you're actively working on it, you're just getting started, or no, but you know that you need to. And if that's the case, then we're in the right place. But yeah, Chris, what are you seeing with trends and where people are at with their AI overview strategies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of people that we're talking to tend to be in either the bottom two buckets, right? A lot of brands are saying, hey, we really haven't thought about it. We're only starting to think about it now, or they're just getting started. Probably more in that middle bucket is where we're seeing a lot of like new client partnerships, especially talking about like, hey, we know it's important. We know we need to be optimizing against this. We're seeing it. We're seeing AI results a lot more in our own search landscape. A lot of the people we're talking to are saying, hey, I'm using AI search a lot more, my own personal information discovery. So we're seeing a lot of kind of buckets 2 and 3. So it depends on where you are as a brand, right? And kind of your previous engagements and how like priorities like you put into individual marketing partnerships.
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely looks like the poll results kind of aligned with that. I know we had a lot of people in the just getting started bucket, which totally makes sense. But yeah, want to dive a little bit more into that. So, just to kind of overview 3 important tactics for appearing in AI overviews in ChatGPT. We're going to dive into all 3 of these a little bit deeper, but it can be overwhelming to know where to start when you're trying to develop a strategy for appearing in AI overviews. I would say that the good news is you don't totally have to reinvent the wheel. If you already have a solid SEO strategy in place, then you're in a good shape. It's really just a matter of building on what you're already doing it and tailoring it a little better to align with AI overviews and things like ChatGPT. And then digital PR and traditional PR are both really essential for helping set the foundation of your brand's authority, like Chris mentioned previously. It all kind of plays together in creating the perfect storm of being able to be featured and appear in AI overviews in ChatGPT.
Cool. So let's start talking about generative engine optimization, what it is, why it matters, and really how you can start to perform GEO, especially on some of the higher priority models that we're seeing the most questions around, which is 1, ChatGPT, and 2, Google's AI overviews. A lot of this will and AI, a lot of this will translate to AI mode as well, right? So what is GEO? Why does it matter? There's a lot of elements that translate from traditional SEO to GEO. So content optimization, improving link metrics, right? Improving site authority, net new content creation, competitor analysis. A lot of that falls in traditional SEO, but we're seeing a lot more tactics to start to be required for inclusion in generative engines. So that would be things such as, like I said, Reddit inclusion, affiliates, understanding like outreach to understand your citations across the web, right? Things that maybe fell into the SEO bucket, right? But maybe we haven't focused on quite as much in the past, right? Because we're seeing a lot more systems and a lot more sites start to really influence exactly what the output of the individual search result or AI-driven search results are. as well. AI more than ever, at least in its current form, prioritizes like really well-structured content in its summaries. That's one of the biggest things that we see, is the more simply you can structure your content, especially for ChatGPT search, so formatting like bullet lists, tables, those types of things, makes it easier for the AI crawlers, who I think are a little bit, especially ChatGPTs, who are a little more basic than Google's crawlers, to be able to be structured and pull in to their actual ranking systems. So one high priority tip that we're recommending, and this is for ChatGPT, right, is to focus on prompts or keywords that trigger ChatGPT search feature. This is one of the biggest things we're recommending right now to existing clients is, hey, go through your prompts and then figure out which ones trigger the search feature. The search feature gets triggered for numerous criteria. The biggest one being where ChatGPT doesn't feel as it has the internal database to actually answer the question directly. So it feels like it has to go use search as a proxy. Another would be like things like recent events, trigger search, sometimes comparison articles, really deep and detailed questions tend to trigger search. There's a multitude of different things, but oftentimes it is when ChatGPT doesn't feel like it has the information base in order to answer that question, it then triggers search. Why this is important is because it's a little easier to optimize against. The LLM will then use chat search as a wrap. The LLM will then use search as a wrapper to answer the questions. The LLM will then be actually summarizing information it gets from search as opposed to its own internal database. That's where SEO has an even more heavier influence, right? And almost a more direct influence directly because it's using an internal search system. Seen a lot of interesting data around this. Previously, Bing has been thought to be the kind of the primary search engine. We're actually seeing even more data that ChatGPT may have even switched to using more of Google's own individual index. So how does ChatGPT select sources? It's going to look for sources that it finds semantically similar. So sources where it says, hey, these individual pages or passages, right, semantically align with the individual prompt. Oftentimes it also turns that prompt into an actual search query. So which content semantically aligns with that individual search query that someone looked for, and then it's actually going to pull that in using its grounding, using the RAG system, right, and then actually pull that into the search result and then use consensus in order to actually produce the result, right? So there's kind of multiple aspects here. You will need to have your content semantically similar enough to be kind of grounded in its original system. Then the more consensus you have across the different articles that ChatGPT or AI overviews pulled, the more likely ChatGPT is going to be to recommend your individual brand. So that's a matter of having content on your own site that's semantically similar. That's a matter of ensuring your brand is also mentioned across other articles that also have strong degrees of relevance for the core query. What's really cool is a lot of new data has come out even just in the past couple of weeks that really shows like that you can actually get detailed information about like what ChatGPT is searching. So like in the actual like JSON files, if you go in ChatGPT, perform a prompt that triggers an individual search, you can actually see the exact search queries that it's using, right? And that's powerful because then you can start to say, hey, if I want to appear for an article, if I want to appear for what are the best running shoes of 2025, well, here I can see the exact two queries that ChatGPT is going to search in order to ground the results to make that assessment, right? So this would tell me that if I want to appear in this prompt, I need to be optimized against these two queries. Fun tip for a lot of e-commerce brands out there. When we're running these analyses, we're seeing that the term reviews is very commonly used when ChatGPT uses the search functionality, especially for e-commerce products. So that's going to be even more crucial to like optimize and make your content more similar to the term reviews, because we're seeing ChatGPT take a lot of e-commerce based queries and basically put reviews in the query somewhere. So that's a big takeaway we've seen for a lot of e-commerce brands. Also, it's really interesting if you like kind of dig into these JSON files, you'll be able to see kind of like the key elements that ChatGPT thinks is important that it scrapes from every single page. I won't go through all of them, but some really important ones are the title, right? So your title tag, that'd be more traditional SEO. Your title needs to have strong relevance. it's going to actually pull in a snippet. The snippet is quite fascinating because sometimes it will pull in just a snippet of text, like a really similar passage you have on your page to the target query. Or sometimes ChatGPT will literally just go and make its own, right? It'll go read the information and summarize the information and pull it back into the snippet. And that snippet should have a high degree of really contextual relevance to the initial prompt. The other interesting one is pub date or publication date that you see there. That indicates to us that freshness really matters, even for AI search. For a long time, we've known it's worked for traditional search engines. It seems to also be highly impactful for AI-driven search, so much they're actually pulling in the publication date. We've actually seen some success ourselves when updating publication dates of content we've produced, seeing it appear or more consistently appear across AI search engines. So let's talk a little bit about optimizing for Google's AI overviews, right? What steps can you take there? How do you do that? And kind of what informs these results? AI overviews, even more so than ChatGPT, is obviously strictly based off of Google's own indexation engine, right? You're not worrying, hey, about like Bing's indexation. You're just worrying about Google's own index of the web and how it's pulling in content. AI reviews pulls from sources that match the overall topic rate. So once again, kind of similar, it's going to pull in from it's going to pull in from multiple different sources, multiple different articles that may have contextual relevance. AI overviews, what's interesting here is you're going to see AI overviews or results in AI overviews that aren't always in page one. That means it's a different system overall. The rankings might influence AI overviews, but not as directly, right? Sometimes we'll see articles that are on page 2, page 3 appear in AI overviews because they might have a strong passage or a lot of content that actually matches the actual result in Google AI overviews. So that's another key element. So we're seeing a couple differences in terms of like how AI overviews works versus ChatGPT. Another interesting thing is that some recent data suggests that rankings still have a very strong impact on Google's AI overviews. So a study was done by ziptie.dev. They basically graphed and said, hey, like we're going to take the ranking position, and then we're going to take the current ranking position, and then we're going to see how oftentimes that individual page was included in a source such as ChatGPT, Perplexity, or AI overviews. And they saw pretty strong correlations between Perplexity and Google AI overviews to ranking positions, right? So that shows us, right, the SEO, traditional SEO matters a lot for inclusion in Google's AI overviews. The better you rank traditionally, likely the more weight you're going to have. We believe it's a separate system, but rankings and overall relevance, right, is still going to come into play. So the better you rank, the better chance you have of appearing in Google's AI overviews. We get asked a lot of questions around tracking too. How do we track AI overviews and how do we track AI in general? This is a good tip, right? So if you're saying, hey, we're missing from Google's AI overviews, like, or how can we potentially see like opportunities where we're missing? What you can do is you can perform a search for your target query. You can then actually click on the results for AI, the individual AI overview results, the results that do appear. Then you can go to a tool like Ahrefs and you can run the AI overview results through Ahrefs and identify keywords that those pages rank for, right? Then you can start to reverse engineer, hey, exactly like which queries are driving AI overviews. How can I better find more gaps in terms of like where I could potentially appear in AI overviews? We also get a lot of questions around like tracking. So like, how can I better like track ChatGPT, right? Or traffic from AI engines. There's what right now with ChatGPT, they actually tag a lot of their individual like the URLs that it sources. They tag it with the ChatGPT parameter, so you can actually use that parameter in your analytics and then segment that out and say, hey, I just want to see using Google Analytics traffic with the ChatGPT parameter. That would then show you the actual traffic driven directly from users clicking from ChatGPT. Of course, it doesn't account for everything. Another good proxy to see ChatGPT traffic, at least a leading indicator, is your homepage traffic. At least what we see on our site, right, is we'll get cited in ChatGPT for something like best SEO or best digital PR agency, and then oftentimes that interaction will actually go to our homepage and the conversion will happen there. So homepage traffic is another good proxy to see, hey, if we're seeing more homepage direct traffic, And along with increased traffic from ChatGPT referrals, that's a good indication that we're showing up more and more in these AI models. So another question we get asked a lot about is like, hey, what are the steps to like that are optimized against AI search visibility, right? And like, how do I better show up in Google AI overviews, right? There's kind of four different ways that we recommend. One is looking at individual content gaps. So where's the AI overview showing like content that's included in the AI overview, but not your own individual landing page. So that's a sign that you need to have more comprehensive and better context articles. Right, we then recommend like updating the content directly to address those missing topics and then ensuring they're very semantically aligned with what ChatGPT or with what AI overviews are showing. Three is improving your content structure. So as I mentioned before, AI, especially ChatGPT and AIOs, they like really simplified content structure, headings, bullets, highly optimized snippets of text. Even FAQs are statistically shown to actually show more similarity to like key queries, key prompts. So using those type of content can actually improve your overall inclusion in IOs. And another strategy we really like is creating multiple optimized landing pages for AI overviews. The filtering systems aren't as strong in AI overviews, so we see it's oftentimes possible for the same site to get listed even 2 times directly in the AI overviews. And I can show you an example of that. But to do that, you need the content infrastructure to be able to do that. So maybe you have a blog page that targets a topic, but maybe you also have an associated landing page, and both of those could be eligible to then appear in AI overviews, giving you more coverage in that individual result. So in this example, right, you can perform what's called an AIO content gap analysis. So where do you look and say, hey, I'm going to look at all the different sections of this AI overview. So in this example, like the dental digital marketing, they're talking about, in this example, social media marketing, email marketing, pay-per-click, search engine optimization. We might look at our article and say like, hey, where do we like not have that content? Maybe we wrote about a lot about SEO and PPC, but we didn't write a lot about email and social media marketing. Well, that indicates to us that we don't have strong enough coverage in those topical areas. So we need to go revise our content to include that information and then get included in Google's AI overviews. Another way we recommend looking at your content to be included in AI overviews is improving your content structure. So I've mentioned like AI overviews and even ChatGPT, they really prefer like really simplified content. So having more bulleted lists on your pages, headings, listicle style blogs tend to do really well in AIOs in their current iteration. Also using FAQ data. Like I said, there was a recent study by Chris Green that found that like FAQs were one of the strongest formats in terms of having snippets of text or passages of text that have strong similarity against the core keyword. Passage-based indexing is also another way to better align your content. So because what a lot of LLMs will do is they'll kind of scrape information like at the passage level. So it's important that all your passages or a lot of your key passages have really strong similarity. We have a page similarity tool that actually can assess your individual page content and passages. What it will do is you'll be able to enter a given keyword or prompt. It will then embed that content and embed the individual your query or prompt, and it will show you the similarity of your entire page and of every single passage against the core prompt. So you can actually score your content similar to how an LLM or even how Google would score that content by using cosine similarity. So we use this to look at like passage-based optimizations where it's like, hey, how do we improve an individual paragraph or even an individual snippet of text to be more relevant for an LLM? The next strategy that the final strategy that we also really like is creating multiple landing pages. This is really effective. So it has to do a lot with content mapping, right? Like I said, AI overviews can be very generous with like how many pages from a single domain actually are able to appear. So here's an example for best digital PR agency that we get the AI overview for. And you can see we have 2 different pages here. At the very top, we have our blog article. It's the 9 best digital PR agencies of 2025. And then we also have our individual landing page that it also scrapes in. And as a result, we're fortunate enough in this example to actually be referenced directly in the AI overview when it says, hey, what are the best AI overview? What are the best digital PR agencies? They say GoFish Digital is often cited as the strong choice for its full service approach. So really cool example here of like how structuring multiple content assets can really help leverage you in the AI overviews to have even stronger coverage, right? So if you have core keywords you want to optimize for, right, have a landing page, have a blog post, or maybe it's a product page, maybe it's an educational blog post. The more content coverage you have around individual topical areas, the better chance you're going to have of appearing in AI overviews. What's really interesting is like we've also done some tests to see like, hey, how long does it take for like changes on your site to get represented in AI overviews? And we found it could be hours, even just hours, based on crawl rates, right? So like, here's a really deep, really concise query where we searched, hey, what are some dental digital marketing strategies? You can see on the right here at the very top, we're not listed. It's WebFX and Pro sites. We made some changes to the page, added some content, improved the scoring, improved the contextual alignment, and then we asked the query again, and then we were listed #1 right here for the best digital PR strategy. So a lot of times these changes can actually be made pretty fast if Google is able to crawl and index your content during that time, right? Because it's all based on Google's index. You're going to even have faster kind of indexing than you would in some of the other systems. As well, there's also ways you can review AI overviews at scale. We've actually built numerous tools to do this. One that we've recently launched is actually our AI overview grader, which is actually going to embed your content and embed the AI overview and then show you gaps for where you don't have content that you do, or where the AI overview has sections that your content doesn't. So that's another way. That's another way that you can do that. And we can send a link to the landing page where you can sign up for that. But what it will do is it'll actually scrape in the AI, it'll scrape in the AI overview text, embed it, scrape in the text on your page, embed it, and then in the top here it'll say, hey, the AI overview has this section. Do you have it in your do you have it in your content? Yes, you're good. Here's the text. Or here in the bottom here, key strategies to include local SEO. The AI review is talking about that. Is it included? And same, partially. Here's the closest number of text. Here's the closest piece of text to that. You might want to consider revising that to make it an even better match because you have a content gap between what the AI overview is showing and what's actually on your site. Also, another interesting insight is a lot of people are concerned with the clicks and coverage kind of coming from AI overviews. We still expect that to not take dramatic increases. However, we are seeing early tests that Google is actually improving the amount of internal links that they have here. So here's an example where it's back to our best digital PR agency example, where we actually see links to our site, links to another digital PR agency site directly in the AI overview. We're actually seeing more and more of this. So more links are coming, which would in theory, improve the number of direct sources or number of traffic that you're getting from AI overviews. However, we would still largely expect CTR, clicks to drop off just because of the nature of these LLMs and their really strong ability to answer the query directly on the search result without users having to click through. Another request that we get a lot is like, hey, can you measure we know you can measure a page semantically, right? We can use some of our tools to measure a page's semantics, but can you measure an entire site semantics? And we can, right? We actually have abilities to measure, hey, not only are individual pages topically aligned for LLMs, but like overall, topically, do you have a lot of content on your site that shows you're a semantic authority in this area, right? So if you are maybe you're a software and you have a CRM, does your entire site tell traditional search engines, LLMs, hey, they're experts in CRM. So we actually have our semantic content audit. And what this will do is it'll actually embed all of your pages. It'll actually embed all of the pages on the site. And then you'll actually be able to see, hey, what am I topically aligned on? What content am I generally known for? What's my site center? What does Google and other LLMs think I'm an expert in as well? What are some areas where maybe our pages where it's like, hey, we wrote this page, but it's kind of not topically aligned, right? So maybe we're a digital marketing agency, but we wrote a post on hey, audience research or more traditional PR. That might not be the best fit. That might be less topically aligned than a lot of our other content on our site. So this will kind of give you a full bird's eye view of, hey, how aligned is your content at scale for traditional Google search and for LLMs. Cool. Now I can pass things over to Kalina to kind of talk through digital PR and how you can leverage that to improve your visibility.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so we're going to shift gears a little bit to setting the foundation, like I mentioned earlier, for your brand to be recognized and picked up by AI by overall building your site's authority and your brand's authority. So, digital PR is a strategy that we use for building links, which is obviously critical from an SEO perspective, as we know that links act as a vote of confidence in the eyes of Google, but it's also really impactful for AI visibility in a few different ways. Getting mentioned in major media outlets is always going to increase your visibility in some capacity, obviously, but you now also have the opportunity to associate your brand with your core products and services. So, for instance, if we got coverage in a news site, they would probably say something like "Go Fish, comma, a digital marketing agency said XYZ." And that phrase, digital marketing agency, helps link the concept of who we are with what we do, essentially helping AI understand what you do and when users might need to find you. So to kind of take that a little bit further, if someone's searching then best digital marketing agency, if we've gotten a lot of media coverage with that associated phrase from highly authoritative sites, we're more likely to get pulled into AI responses because we've built that credibility and that link. So those keyword-rich phrases coming from reputable sources are huge to essentially educate AI models on your business. So some data to kind of back this up. Ahrefs recently did a study. They analyzed over 4,300 branded websites across 100,000 keywords, and they looked at which brands were mentioned in AI overviews and then correlated that with dozens of SEO and brand metrics. So things like backlinks, domain rating, search volume, brand mentions, that kind of thing. You can see here that the strongest correlation was how often a brand is mentioned on the web, even without a backlink, which goes back to the point of how LLMs prioritize visibility and natural language across the internet. You can also see a strong correlation with things like branded anchors. So that kind of further reiterates the importance of brand mentions and then also the context that goes along with links. But of course, backlinks still matter too, just kind of in a different way than we traditionally would think about link equity. Obviously, you can't have anchors without links. So there's that, but you can see DR, which is if you can go back to the slides, Chris, looks like we popped away. But yeah, you can see DR is inherently tied to the strength of backlink profile. And then the number of referring domains was another one that was on that chart, which shows some degree of ranking in AI overviews. So the main takeaway here is that brand mentions matter for AI overviews just as much, if not, than overall links itself. And digital PR is a really great way to hit the best of both worlds when it comes to mentions and links. Cool. So OpenAI has a lot of different partnerships, which we alluded to, with a lot of different media publications for accessing information and then using them as sources and responses. So this includes groups like Hearst, which owns Cosmo, Good Housekeeping, Men's Health, Condé Nast, which owns Vogue, Vanity Fair, Dotdash, which owns People, Better Homes and Gardens. The list goes on. There's a lot more outlets that aren't featured slide. But this is why it's so important to prioritize media outlets in your outreach strategies, not just focusing on building links and mentions from hyper relevant sites to your industry. While that is important too, OpenAI has legal access and licensing rights to these sites. So these publications are essentially whitelisted for use in the models, which means that their stories and content could then appear directly in ChatGPT outputs, either quoted, paraphrased, or then used as a reference when answering your questions. And then if you're being talked about in these publications, that content is more likely to be used to train or influence ChatGPT's understanding of your brand, which in turn increases the odds that ChatGPT will reference your brand or your site directly when serving responses to users. So how do you get these coveted placements? The question that everyone wants to know. The goal here is to create link-worthy content. Digital PR is one of the most effective strategies to build organic coverage from high-authority editorial sites. It uses public relations strategies to achieve SEO-based goals. And these links can be really hard to come by, so it requires a lot of upfront planning and content creation in order to get the results that are truly going to move the needle. The trick here is to come up with content that a journalist is going to want to cover and content that fits into what's going on in the current news cycle whenever you're pitching it. The main goal is truly backlinks, media mentions, that kind of thing. So you have a little bit more flexibility in terms of the types of content you produce. You want to think about things that are related to, but not necessarily about your brand or service. Instead, have that like 1 degree of separation from your primary product and your primary revenue driver. We've heard firsthand from journalists that they don't want to cover things that sound like an ad. So you kind of have to find that balance and make sure you're not pushing out something that just is self-promotional, because journalists can truly see right through that. So for instance, in this example that you see here, an SMS marketing company, we asked people what pleasures they would sacrifice to keep their smartphone. Makes sense to come from them because there's a natural tie back to smartphones. But a journalist isn't going to interpret this as an ad that's just pushing their product, because at the end of the day, it's not just about SMS marketing. It's an interesting piece of content that's interesting and broadly applicable to a lot of different people that then a journalist can turn and write a story into. So this was a series of would you rather questions, and then we turned those statistics into engaging infographics to bring them to life. One of the insights, for example, was that 30% of people would rather give up their dog over their smartphone, which is really crazy to think about. But that was the one that really caught the attention of a lot of journalists. And then they wrote a story about it, linked back to it, and cited the study as a source. It's almost like, you don't have to take my word for it. This company did this research. A reputable media outlet is always going to reference the creator of the research. Oftentimes, that's going to be something like, in this case, Simple Texting, an SMS marketing company, ran a recent survey about XYZ. And that phrase is essentially just the journalist citing their source, leaning into the expertise of the creator, and kind of like validating why they're covering it. So in that one piece of coverage, you get not only a backlink, but ideally you're also getting a brand mention, context around your business, and that backlink, which all feeds into this cycle of AI understanding what your brand is. So on top of figuring out what you're going to pitch, you also need to figure out who you're going to pitch. And I would recommend doing this exercise in tandem with your content development. So as soon as you start thinking about potential ideas, also start to think about the broad types of journalists that you would pitch them to. So each campaign, you want to have multiple different angles and different types of people that you can reach out to. So you might be pitching someone like general interest reporters, career business outlets, local outlets, all of that with just one story, depending on the results of your study. You need to make sure your targets make sense. Obviously, you wouldn't want to pitch something like a beauty story to a finance writer unless there was some really, really strong cost angle that made it make sense. But the more different areas and the wider you can reach with all of your different outreach angles, the more opportunities you create for coverage and the more backup plans essentially you create for yourself. So once you have those general guardrails of like the types of publications you want to pitch to, you can then dig a little bit deeper into the individuals at each outlet to determine who is the best fit to pitch within each publication. Obviously, there's like hundreds of different writers at every single outlet, so it's important to do your due diligence and make sure you find the ones that make sense. So for instance, if you were pitching something about people going into debt for makeup and you found that balance between beauty outlets and finance outlets, you'd want to make sure that you're pitching the fluffier lifestyle reporters at the finance outlets rather than the ones that are covering like stocks or larger economic trends. You can also look at the types of content that each reporter is covering. So if you're pitching a survey, for instance, maybe look for reporters at that outlet that have covered surveys in the past. There are a ton of different media databases and tools that can help speed up this process, but you can also just manually find journalists simply by searching keywords through Google News. Many journalists will list their email addresses directly within their stories and their bios and their social media handles. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out directly to journalists, as they want pitches to kind of make their job easier as long as they're relevant to their coverage area. And then once you've identified who you're going to pitch, it's important to put some thought into how you're going to deliver that message. Every piece of this is really critical. So the content piece is huge. It's also just as important what you do with that content, especially if you're pitching multiple different types of outlets. The ways in which you deliver your pitch to each type of outlet should kind of change with that. So if you're pitching that story that appeals to both beauty and finance reporters, the tone of your pitch should change to match their style, as well as like the insights and general framing of the outreach message. So you want to keep the topics broad, but the pitch itself should be narrow to the statistics that are relevant to the coverage history and the audience of whoever you're pitching. So for instance, in this example here, if you're pitching a campaign about NFL fans to a journalist in Wisconsin, you wouldn't want to lead with insights about Kansas City, even if that's where your insights lead and that was like the top result in your study. So you can see in this example, Kyle mentioned the Packers in the subject line and the hook of the pitch, but then framed the rest of the message accordingly. So he still mentioned Kansas City and how it was the most common answer, but framed with the perspective of the Packers to make sure it was interesting and relevant to the journalist. That local angle is a really great way to personalize your outreach. And it's great to look for other opportunities to do that beyond just localization. So, my biggest tip, kind of across all of this, is to keep the end goal in mind throughout every stage of the process. Starting with ideation, if you know that you want to secure coverage from a site like Cosmo because they have that OpenAI partnership and maybe it's a gap in your backlink profile, do some research into what they're covering before you decide on a story idea to run with. Go back to that outlet when you're analyzing insights. So once you've got like your results and you're pulling out your key insights, go back and see what they're interested in. Look at the graphics that are on their website. You don't necessarily need to match the branding of their graphics. You should definitely stay authentic and true to yourself. But it's important to see kind of what types of images they might be looking for. Maybe they're more interested in infographics over maps or something to that effect. And then even when you're drafting your pitch, go and look at the different types of tones, the different stories that they're covering and how they're writing their stories, and match that within your pitch. Shoot for the moon at this stage. So think of your like top tier dream publication that you would really love to get coverage in, because chances are if it's relevant to one major publication, there's probably a space for it in others. So you're not necessarily like shoehorning yourself into just that one specific publication, but you're giving yourself an aspirational goal that you can kind of work towards. The news cycle can be really hard to predict, and you're not always going to get it right every single time. That's part of the gamble with earned media strategies. And especially because of how many people want to be featured in these stories, especially as they're becoming more important, you have to really earn that media placement. So, the more that you can appeal to reporters and think about them every step of the way throughout your content, the more likely you are to land media placements that will overall boost your AI visibility. So we're going to pause there again for another poll. Interested to hear what everybody's biggest challenge your brand faces with AI visibility. Either you're not showing up at all in results, you're not sure how to measure it, you're not sure what influences, or you're not even sure where to start. I know we've had a few questions in the chat, and I know we've heard from clients and people alike that measuring is a really big one. But Chris, interested on your take on this as well.
Yeah, measuring AI chat or AI prompts is interesting. I think it's an emerging it's kind of an emerging space. Right now, what we're advising client partners on is Ahrefs has a brand radar that's can mention that can kind of track your AI overviews, your ChatGPT mentions. There's also other LLM direct trackers such as Profound and Peak AI. So those are ways that we're saying like, hey, there's already tooling and infrastructure for people to actually track either direct AI visibility kind of like broadly through Ahrefs, or actually track your individual prompts through a tool like Profound or Peak AI.
Yeah, for sure. And sounds like measuring is the biggest one across the team, with 55% of you guys saying that that is the hardest thing to do. So yeah, makes sense. One more question for you guys. I think Chris, you're going to take this one.
Yep. So kind of to wrap it up, we have a last poll for you all. If you're interested, are you interested in getting an AI visibility audit to really understand how your brand appears in AI search? This will be a consultation with one of our team members. We'll basically be walking you through different opportunities for you to appear in AI search. So be looking through the different models like AI overviews, ChatGPT, Google AI mode, understanding what content's ranking, how you're appearing for key prompts. Is ChatGPT using search? Is it not? What are some of the opportunities that you can use or competitors are using to get visibility? So it's a full consultation with our team to really understand, hey, what are opportunities? What are ways you could change your content strategy, your outreach strategy, your PR strategy to better really align with traditional AI search? It's a 30-minute conversation with one of our team members where you can really ask anything you want to about AI search and what our recommendations would be to improve your brand. So cool. I think we're going to keep that poll up. For next steps, if you want to follow up with us, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. I post a lot on LinkedIn around everything from traditional SEO to AI search, news, tips, what's going on, how you can use log files to better understand if you're getting crawled or not, what search engines they're using, that type of thing. So please feel free to connect with me there on LinkedIn if you're looking for a little bit more regular updates around AI and SEO. As well, if you're attending these webinars, our next webinar will be coming up called the CMO Nightmare, how AI is breaking your marketing metrics and how you fix it. So you can scan the QR code there to actually see the sign up link, or you can see the sign up link to actually go to that webinar. So that brings us to the end. now we can feel free to now we can answer some of the questions that you guys have been asking in the Q&A. So I'll start to pull that up. And then we can go ahead and see some of the questions that you all have had. So let me pull that up. All right. So we'll start to go through some of these. So first question is what's the ideal audit process for metrics for AI overviews, right? I think there's First, I think there's several different metrics that you want to be looking at. One is you want to be looking like overall impressions, right? That's going to actually be your best indication of like how you're performing in Google as a whole. It's not going to segment out AI overviews, but it will actually be your best metric for like, hey, are you seeing increased visibility in Google or decreased visibility? Because an AI overview will count as an impression. Unfortunately, I think I've seen this question a lot. How do we measure it, like Google AI overviews or AI mode? Google right now has no direct filter that you can narrow down and use for either of those platforms. So it's all rolled into basically your broader search console data. You cannot directly filter out AI overviews or AI mode metrics. So that leaves you to look at impressions. You can use clicks as a proxy. You can use clicks as a proxy, but I use that as a secondary metric. You could also use, like I said, Ahrefs brand radar to better see like, hey, how like are you improving in AI overviews? That's another way you can actually use to see, hey, are you improving AI overviews in terms of metrics? Um, Next question: how important is an LMS.txt file? Not. I think that's something that's getting pushed a lot. We don't think that's particularly important, right? It basically controls whether it's a file that controls whether or not the LLMs can crawl your content. We generally see the vast majority of our clients don't have one, and that is not to us what determines like, hey, how you get crawled by AI search, right? So like having one is generally not super important. I will put that at bottom of the priority list. I think technically it's important to understand like checking your log files and say like, hey, are you getting crawled? But I do not think you need a separate file to give specific directions to LLM crawlers, right? I don't think it's necessary, and we're not seeing a ton of adaptation around it, even from large brands. I put that lower on the priority list in terms of what you're looking for. Next question. You have an agency partner who suggests using a mix of informational and transactional intent keywords in the footer copy for e-commerce pages to rank in AI overviews and improve conversions. I'm concerned that this will basically lower conversion rates. I think my stance would be I don't think it's going to harm your e-commerce pages from conversion rates. You could always A/B test against. That could be a test where it's like, hey, we're going to do it on 5 pages. We're going to A/B test it. We're going to run a CRO test where we A/B test this one against the not one without text and see, does this actually hurt conversions? Generally, the best practice is to put it below your actual transactional content. So below your product grids, below any other additional information on the product listing page, anything like that. So like generally that should lower its impact on conversions while still improving its impact on SEO or even AI search. It's still We would still recommend even having things like FAQs on those pages because it's going to improve the semantic alignment of those pages in really, really kind of like chunkable ways, so to speak. Kalina, not sure if you had thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree with what you said. Looking through some of the questions, there was an interesting question on here about sites and getting interest in large publications. And I would just encourage you to start. You don't always have to have like the biggest brand to break through. Just having like content and interesting data is a great way to kind of break through and get started. So you don't necessarily have to be the most reputable source in order to just start digital PR. It's more about the content itself and the types of content that you're delivering.
Cool. Um, Looking around some of the other questions, Steve asks, where can I find the JSON file in ChatGPT, the one we were showing earlier? There's a couple ways to get it. One's pretty technical where it's like you have to right click inspect and then you actually like copy one of the basically the chat ID, and you paste it into the DOM, and then it will actually show you, hey, like here's the JSON files used to pull that. The easier way is there's an extension called ChatGPT Path, is an automated extension that will basically pull out the data from ChatGPT and show you the search queries that it used. But if you want the technical approach, you go to ChatGPT. It's only when it performs a search, right? The JSON file will not exist if it doesn't perform a search. But if it performs a search, right-click inspect. There's a code at the very end. It's like a let's say 8 sentence like numeric alphanumeric code at the very in your ChatGPT chat. You paste that into the file search, and then you'll choose fetch/XHR, and then that will show you the JSON file. You'll click that and it will show you. So there's articles out there that can like walk you through the process. I would use ChatGPT Path. That's probably the easiest way to get that data. Cool. A couple of other questions. Someone asked about the freshness signals. Is it the updated or publication date? It should be the updated date, right? So updating the timestamp should reflect its changes in ChatGPT. So it should be the updated date in terms of what it shows directly in ChatGPT, because they want to see, hey, similar to Google, they probably want to see fresh content, right? That's, not, if you ask it for the best cell phones, right? It's not in ChatGPT's best interest to give you like cell phones from like 2020, right, to 2013. Like these systems need ways of like saying like, hey, like how am I giving like modern, actual like up-to-date content? The timestamps are still actually surprisingly one of the best ways to do that.
There was another question about link-worthy content for B2B publication or B2B websites. And I think that's a really interesting topic. Yeah, I think it can be a little bit more challenging for B2B companies. But when you lean into tangential topics, so things that, like I said, are not necessarily about your brand or service, but have that degree of separation, you can really get creative with the types of content that you're creating. So that example that I shared was an SMS marketing company, which is B2B, of course, but we can make it consumer focused and make it broadly applicable by just kind of like brainstorming other ways that are tangentially related to your brand and your company. So it's kind of just a matter of getting creative and yeah, just putting your creativity to the test to make things a little bit more applicable.
Cool. I think we have time for a couple more questions here. Um, go through. Someone asked SEMrush or Ahrefs for tracking and monitoring appearance and AI overviews. Argo, I think both will work, right? Both have the functionality to be able to do it. SEMrush, I believe, is actually first in its ability to track AI overviews. Ahrefs is later caught up and actually has that capability. Ahrefs brand radar is probably one of the stronger AI trackers in the market. It is an additional price. So if you use the tool, just be aware of that. It does not come with kind of their base packages, but can be useful for tools that are for companies that are really looking to better understand how they appear in AI search. We generally tend to lean Ahrefs in terms of that. That's kind of our internal tracking tool of choice here at Go Fish Digital. However, if you're already using the other one, I think both will be completely fine. I wouldn't migrate tools necessarily just for this. If you're looking for one, Ahrefs tends to be a strong solution. And so another question here about maybe basically concerns, saying like, hey, are there any concerns around cannibalization for multiple pages around the same topics, right? So that was back to the digital PR example we showed, where like, hey, AI reviews was showing like our blog post and our landing page. Our take has been the cannibalization is a bit overrated. Personally, I think it scared too many SEOs from like kind of creating like the assets they actually need to. Because we even saw in traditional search, even before the release of AI overviews, both of those pages would rank, both our landing page and our blog article. I think to us, it's about having pages that serve different intents. So no, we wouldn't want 5 different pages about our digital. We wouldn't want 5 different pages about our digital PR landing page. We just want one, but we might want 5 different pages, one with our digital PR landing page, the one with the best agencies, the one with how to choose one, how much does a digital PR agency cost, digital PR versus traditional PR, right? Like those types of pages that are inherently answering like different questions or different intents that people would have. We think is okay. And oftentimes we'll actually see like you'll get multiple opportunities to rank with having those different pages. So you don't want to create the same page around the exact same topic. That's what can get you into more trouble with cannibalization, where it's like Google doesn't know which one to pick. However, more content will give you kind of more shots on net and more really, one, improve your topical authority to sort of show Google like, hey, like they write about this a lot. They're experts in it. As well, it'll give you like different intents to optimize for. And that's especially important for Google's AI mode, because you search for like what's the best digital PR agency in Google's AI mode. Yes, it'll give you lists, but like oftentimes we're seeing like, hey, someone wrote an article on how to choose a digital PR agency that gets pulled into the sources. And then all of a sudden that article becomes part of the conversation because they had a wide degree of content spread. So like I would say, don't be shy about picking a topic and then ensuring you have complete coverage around that topic across all the different questions people will be asking. So I think that brings us to the full hour. So we appreciate everyone coming out, listening to us today, kind of walking through how to rank in ChatGPT, AI mode, and AI overviews. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, schedule a consultation. Our team will be more than happy to help you and answer any questions you have around your current plans, visibility, competitors, or potential opportunities moving forward. So with that, thank you very much, all.
Thanks.